Good afternoon to everyone. Thank you for joining this specific event, which is within the project of GLAMMONS. You will find all the main information about this project on the first slide. We will support actually this presentation. So I'm delighted to be the moderator of my dear colleague Stelios from Mazomos, who will introduce us, will do a kind of overview of the different first of all, of the meaning of the licenses within the cultural sectors, and then if there will be, and I hope so, there will be some time, then we can open little sections of 5, maximum 10 minutes concerning questions, because I think we need also to have a kind of interactions, because sometimes, organizations, cultural organizations, for example, the consortium that I see Frank Gotero here has joined us, and I thank him again for the availability and disponibility that he showed towards our research and our projects. Probably they have more specific, punctual questions. So, Stelios, the floor is yours, please.
Hi all, I'm Stelios Lekakis. I'm trying to make my presentation full screen, but apart from that, I'm an archaeologist and a heritage specialist, and I hope.
Ok. Salut.
I am here. I'm participating in the project representing our company Mazomos Landscape and Heritage Consultancy, and we're happy to be among colleagues, of course. And I'm gonna share a few points on the Open GLAM movement, the ideas and the concepts behind the cultural data statue at the moment, and some ideas again behind the licenses, the Creative Commons licenses, and try to understand and conversion actually why small cultural organizations as galleries, libraries, archives and museums need to have data, open data, and provide them to the public. So I'm gonna talk a little bit, so the whole of the presentation will be around 25 to 30 minutes, so we'll have some time for questions then. I'm gonna talk a bit about the digital landscape for GLAMs and the development of the Open GLAM movement, the concept of promoting openness of digital collections, and of course, the idea of copyright versus open access and open access data and licenses. Now, what about the landscape? Since 2000s, we have this idea of a new museum culture that has been promoted by the tools, by digitalization, the process of digitalization, and of course, the new ethos of sharing data online, promoted by the Web 2.0, but also the movement of digital commons. There's a lot to discuss about that, but I will just say that it promotes the concept of openness, being open on what we do and how we do it, promoting peering, so collaboration between peers, between colleagues, sharing and acting globally for doing business. So this is an ethos that permits also cultural organizations since 2000s. Openness is sometimes understood in our discussion, so we sometimes think that being open just means being accessible, but we sometimes forget to ask whether the data that are presented, being that raw data or collections or images, for example, or paintings if it is a gallery, if they're reusable or indeed under copyright. So what is copyright? Copyright ensures that creators, including authors and other producers, receive recognition, protection, and royalties for their work. And according to legislation, if an item is copyrighted, being that a theatrical play, for example, it remains under copyright for the life of the creator, and also according to EU law for plus 70 years. And after that, it can or cannot be promoted as an open, as in the digital, in the public domain. I'll explain a bit what the public domain is. So this is more or less the landscape, the digital landscape for commons concerning licensing and copyrights. And this is a nice example that comes from our work in GLAMMONS, and especially from a deliverable that we co-authored with Dr. Mina Dragouni. And it exactly shows this idea that sometimes information is accessible, so you can all enter the Museo Nacional Centro d'Arte, Reina Sofia, that holds copyright for the paintings of Pablo Picasso. And you can sometimes look at the paintings and browse through, but you cannot do anything with them. So if you need to use it in a presentation, for example, this is all copyrighted, and you don't have the permission to do it. So if we were to present it in this presentation, that it is kind of public, because you are in, and also this is being recorded, it can be reproduced, so it can be accessible to many other people, we would be breaking the law. And colleagues from the museum could actually sue us for using the paintings without permit. So you can see how challenging this is, because we think sometimes things are open and accessible because we can view them on our screen, on our office, in our office or in our room. But indeed, they're very well protected, and we run the risk of being sued if we use them inappropriately. Right. And so what we're trying to explain here through that paradigm, through that example, is the need to have open data. So for anyone to use or reuse and redistribute for free, subject only at most to the requirement to give credit to the author or the creator. And this comes from an interpretation by the Open GLAM movement, the Open GLAM working group, that's a consortium of colleagues that work towards this promotion of open data in order to be easily shareable and redistributable. So I said before that after the 70 years have passed from the creation of cultural object, it can then enter the public domain. That is, if not the stewards of this cultural object, if they do not, if they don't do any movements in order to keep the copyright on. So if they don't do anything, the object goes straight into the public domain. What is the public domain? Public domain is a pool of shared resources that is made up from all collective works that are not subject to any intellectual property rights. So this can be considered as the proper shared heritage, cultural heritage of the humanity that can be used and reused and that we can be inspired from and actually reuse in our work without running the risk of paying fines. And of course, there are various, because this is an immense pool holding millions or even more cultural objects. There are various tools to enable the screening and the use and the reuse of these objects. And some of these tools are the Europeana that you all know. I don't have to go into more detail about that, but also the Creative Commons licenses to promote open access, knowledge sharing, and collaborative creativity. And one of the most known Creative Commons license is, of course, the tag that you see on your right, which is the public domain, and which means that an object or a piece of code or any other item that we would like to that we have created has entered the public domain, so it can be put there and for all to have access and enjoy. Yeah, and as you can see in the text, for GLAMs, it is often used, the tag, the public domain tag, is often used for waiving rights to metadata as well. Not only the object, but also the metadata relating to the digitized records and resources. For hesitant institutions and for creators that don't want to release all types of copyright to their work, that being also the digitized material that they may hold, there are a number of Creative Commons licenses that allow or prohibit users to do a number of things. The most common might be number 2, which is the CC by SA, the Attribution Share Alike license. So this allows others to distribute, remix, adapt, and build upon the work, but requires that the derivative works need to be shared under the same license. So if you use it to create some sort of another type of information or maybe another item, you need to use the same license to share it. So it needs to be shared with CC by SA. And this is used most commonly by Wikipedia that we use every day. And there are all sorts of different other licenses, and the final one being CC by NCND, so attribution, non-commercial, non-derivatives. And this is the most kind of strict and most like closer to the all data reserved copyright. But again, it allows redistribution into the Creative Commons realm. So focusing mostly now on GLAMs, restrictions, of course, as we know from our work in the GLAMs, allows us to retain control over the use of digital images, of artworks. So in some ways to prevent misuse or commercial or political appropriations that we have seen in many cases, especially during very systematic political activity close to elections or even in a kind of tense political environment. And sometimes when fees apply, so when GLAMs hold, retain control and apply fees to the users of the material, these gains, this income may reimburse part of the digitization costs that in many cases is quite significant. It costs a lot to digitize resources. Although in practice, especially for small organizations as a small gallery or a small archive with only a handful of employees, this involves time-consuming administrative activities, while sales revenues from images are said to remain minor. And this is what the bibliography shows us, that especially in small organizations, it doesn't actually help much. And of course, by restricting access, you also restrict the learning and creative engagement in cultural heritage, and you may as well push users away from a legitimate source of information and compromise your profile as a public institution. So there are lots of things to consider before restricting access to your data. And this is a nice example, again, from the said deliverable. This is a page from the National Gallery in the UK, a public institution, that charge fees for downloading and reproducing images from their website, and even for a presentation, like a PowerPoint for a presentation in a school, or even a lecture, or a conference. This charge is £10 for a single image. So imagine how much the cost would be if you were to make a presentation about 19th or 20th century paintings, for example, in the National Gallery. So by saying this, the description of the open data, the restrictions posed by restricting access, and the problems that arise from this challenge, are there any good practices that we can use? Our colleagues in the Open GLAM initiative, again, in 2013, they have issued a declaration on open access that kind of paves the way for this discussion. And they say that we should try and keep the minimal restrictions, so a Creative Commons zero license, the public domain tag, as we said, to the artifacts. Principle 2, do not add new rights to the digital representation. So when you digitize your resources, do not add new rights or copyrights, especially when they have expired. And make an explicit statement of your wishes regarding the reuse and the repurposing of your data. So you don't need to restrict access, but you can, of course, express your interests, express your wishes on how you would like people to reuse and readapt your resources. And we have a nice example by the British Library here that says you need to name the creator clearly and accurately. You need to attribute the source of the image or the text. You need to put a link back to the British Library. You need to share the knowledge and support the public domain. Of course, preserve all public domain marks and notices attached to the works. So you can see, by putting some very brief and well-articulated directions, you can actually keep it open and help people reach to your resources and actually take it and reuse it and link back to you. So you create kind of a landscape that is equitable but also accessible for most of the people using at least online resources to come to you and take something and bring back lots of other nice things. Some more principles by the Open GLAM initiative: publish data in open file formats, as for example protocols as the Open Archives initiative. These are protocols that help you structure information provided online in order to help also the metadata harvesting, so allow people to reach the information but also link back to you, and pursue audiences engagement in novel ways on the web. So try to keep it going, to keep people coming to your website and living with things that interest them, but also in a way that they can come back, but also communicate further what you are doing in your organization. Also, trust the public domain aggregators as the Europeana and the Wikimedia Commons. These are, again, pools that hold the public domain and help people. They are organized centrally in big websites, so they can allow people to reach easily you through their website and find your resources. But also there are country-specific and thematic open data platforms nowadays, as the Art UK in Britain or the Coding Da Vinci in Germany. And of course, each country has its own resources, open data platforms that you can access information from. And of course, useful channels, again, to communicate the content and publish relevant output. Someone would say one of the biggest pools of data is Google Arts and Culture, for example. And this is an interesting example because there are lots and lots of GLAMs in Europe participating in this project run by Google the last decade or so. And this could be considered an opportunity because there is a central organization offering to host resources, appealing to people and organizations that have, that don't have the budget to do much with their collections. However, the platform, Google, features only copyright-free and copyright-cleared content, and the ownership of artworks imagery remains with partnering GLAMs, so this is good. However, digital materials can be accessed only through Google. So this is something that you cannot, you offer your material for free. However, it can only be accessed through Google. So if you try to access it through a different platform, you might again be breaking the law. So you can see how sometimes you are helping creating a walled garden, as the bibliography says, by putting in materials that may be better off in the public domain. Just to finish with, here are some percentages of participating GLAMs per country. This is from the Open GLAM survey by McCarthy and Wallace in 2018. And you can see how some countries are featuring better than the others. For example, Germany and Poland in Open GLAMs. Some of the countries, the top countries providing digital cultural materials to European, and again, how the Netherlands and Germany and United Kingdom are the three most, the three countries scoring the most. Final two slides. So what can we do as small, especially small galleries, libraries, archives, and museums to promote open data practice and implement it? We need to think clearly and have a strategy on what license to use in our collections and have a strategy behind it of with what we want to do with it and how we're going to do it. We need to use the public domain tag or the Creative Commons Zero license for most of our things. Or if we cannot, we can use the CC BY for maximum reuse. We need to ensure that our data, our data that we are promoting is structured and interoperable. So use standard metadata formats, especially useful for the cultural organizations, the GLAMs, which is the Dublin Core, for example, the IIIF, and enable linked open data for better integration so that our data put out there, put into the public domain realm can speak to each other and can be easily reachable and findable if people look for them. And of course, develop partnerships, reach out to other GLAMs that are the same scale as ours might be, and try to contribute to common aggregators as the European Wikimedia Commons or other Open GLAM initiatives. Engaging with people, actually, because platforms are not just that. There are lots of colleagues behind them managing, operating them, and helping out in delivering the best possible result. So researchers, educators, and creative industries. And of course, have in mind also ethical and legal considerations, because data are not just pieces of code or images. We need to respect privacy. Any people that might be still living or they might not want their identity put out in the public. Indigenous rights or sensitive pieces of heritage that again respond or reflect people's lives that they would rather have them private, not public. And even if this is the case, we can always develop policies for ethical data sharing. If licenses do not cover us properly, we can use the license as the main strategy and develop further rules, let's say, in order to make sure that we cover privacy or other types of rights of people in a most helpful and caring way. And of course, the main thing is to advocate, to let the speech out, to let people know how this is properly done, and train internally in the organization. So try to educate our staff on open data benefits, and of course, secure leadership to support open access policies. There are lots of training tools to use. If you are interested, we can talk further about it. And there are lots of organizations providing these certificates, for example, on Creative Commons licenses or how to properly make data open. For example, there's a training initiative by the Open GLAM initiative that it is for a couple of weeks or 1 week and can help younger colleagues or older colleagues that are in charge to actually make it make their data more accessible and useful to the public. That's all for me. As I said, it will be just a brief introduction on the thing, and I'm happy to to engage in conversation and answer any questions that are you might have.
Perfect, Stelios. Thank you so much for this nice and comprehensive presentation. That was really interesting to have the many guidelines. And then, of course, I mean, I would invite people that are really interested to check all the, it could be also kind of challenging in terms of finding the right license, considering the advantages and disadvantages. Okay, so I will just open the floor to other, to the participants. So, are there any licenses to use? How you need to implement, about the procedures? We have the consortium, we have Frank, we have Giulia. Do you think that you might be interested in using, for example, one of these licenses? To what extent?
Well, yes, I think so. But it was very interesting because I think that me and my colleagues are not well educated about these kind of licenses. And this is an important subject for us as we are trying to do something about our collection and make it accessible to everyone online and we are, yes, it's a big project, and we know that it's also kind of expensive because we need time to understand all these
Exactly.
licensing process.
This was exactly my comment, just before you asked the question. This is what I had in mind, that it is free to use the license as it is. You just need to take the tag, the appropriate tag, and put it on your data, or I don't know, like images or figures or whatever. But as you said, there is the need to train the staff, train the people managing the collections, and probably making the proper arrangements in the website. So yes, it can involve costs. So even though the license itself it's free, you need to adapt to the concept. So you need to train your colleagues, you need to train yourself, you need to create a strategy, and you might need, if things are really complicated with your organization, you might need to contact maybe a law expert on licenses that are there a lot
Exactly.
in Europe to help you register the collections in the appropriate way. So yeah, this is a challenge.
Indeed. If there are no other questions, I will pose one or two questions to Stelios, because the topic is really, I think that it's not just from cultural organizations, creative organizations, but also from an academic perspective. Because my first question was about, all these licenses is to use these images, right? But what if I pay, for example, you provide the example in UK institutions, I can pay £10 in order to use it, to download and to incorporate these pictures. But is there any control if I decide to reutilize this picture, not just for the PowerPoint presentations, but for example, I'm an artist and I wanted to use this image, but I would like to transform it, because then here we also write about the ownership of the artist, the paternity rights, which is really debatable in the literatures on intellectual property rights. This is the first question. And then the second question is, all these licenses, do you think that, it's a provocative question. Do you think that all these licenses still make sense in a era characterized by the open access with the artificial intelligence? Because we know we have different programs, and that means that I'm not an artist, but I can still, access a huge amount of images. And there are movements of artists that were complaining because actually AI collected, not AI per se, but the creators, the programmers, they collected a lot of images without asking for the permission. So AI is being trained on, I would say, a huge amount of stolen information, so in terms of images, but still it's used to train AI. And of course, so the boundaries between what is legal and what is not illegal, they're really buried up. So my question is, does this system of licenses still make sense, and to what extent?
Yeah, no, these are both really proper and nice questions, Marilena. Thanks a lot for them. And the first question is whether someone, if you pay this £10 and download this Raphael image from the 18th, 17th century, does it make, how can the moderator say if you are using it in other ways? They can't. This is the short answer. But if they manage to, they can sue you. And this is what license does. This is a legal tool to moderate use. Of course, it cannot control it, it cannot monitor it, and it is almost impossible if you do a small piece of artwork, for example, based on that image, and distribute it locally, or have it, I don't know, somewhere outside the UK, it's almost impossible for them to spot, even though they have now AI tools that they can they can track down digital creations like that. But this is not the case from our point of view, from the small GLAM's perspective. It is just a way to release data with a license, so that people can see, can use, and possibly, if the license permits, reuse. Now, it can be used to take someone to court if we really need to, but this is not the point here. It's an idea of promoting, sharing ideas and materials. And if this is distributed, if this process, if this is way of dealing with things is distributed widely, then more and more people will know what a CC BY means, and they probably adapt to it and don't use it in their own way. And also they might want to use their own to forward, to open their data in the same way. So it's the medium that it's of interest here, the license as a tool, not as a punishing tool, but as a tool of promoting open access. Now, in terms of the AI, this is the question for the $1 million, because everybody thinks about it, and little is done. However, there is growing discussion, and of course, a few months ago, there was the AI declaration. It had another name. That it was an interstate discussion, and they decided on a good practice of use of AI. And in this declaration, that of course it's not legally binding, it's just a wish list, and of course the US and other state parties didn't actually sign the thing. So there are lots of problems, but in this declaration there was this need to properly define what the algorithms have been trained on, and how this need to look from now onwards in order to protect creators' rights, and of course try to be in a just and equitable way. There is no solution, like no magic pill so far, but there are lots of organizations putting down their own rules of how things needs to be done. And I think that we need to think towards this kind of local adaptation for AI and LLM models, in order to kind of, from collecting the needs of our artists, of our digital creators, of our creative class, if you may, that we can then move to more generalized directions, because the easy solution would be copyright everything and that's it. But then again, this keeps us in a very limited space that does not work well with this idea of communicating, of going online, of sharing everything online. So we need to think more about it.
Yeah, indeed, because there are really interesting questions nowadays, and I think that when we are working, in the cultural and creative sectors, we are confronted all the time with these barriers or enablers, because at the end of the day, it's a question to find a kind of trade-off between the cost and the benefits, because I think, small, medium organizations can be can have issues in addressing because they don't have too much personnel, they don't have too much resources to apply because it's a process, right? From an organizational perspective. So it needs some investments in order to achieve it. And sometimes, I mean, small, medium organizations see the applications of these licenses as a burden rather than a true benefit in the short period. Then in the medium, long term, probably they can change their perceptions, but in the short term, it could be limitations indeed.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Yeah.
And this is what we're discussing as strategy. It's something that needs to be put forward, discussed by colleagues in the organization, if they're maybe heads of different departments or managers of other departments. And this can be adapted as we go. It doesn't need to be set in stone. We have to have clear principles of how we do open data, if we do open data, and how we do it, and then take it from there and decide, depending on the new pieces of legislation that comes live in the European Union. I mean, the European Union and the European Commissions are working quite systematically on this front. So we'll probably have new directives as in a matter of months from now. So it's good to have people from our organization be on top of things and also monitor and try to use them in the ways that can benefit both the organization but the communities behind it.
Yes, indeed. I think that, to be part of a specific network, one of the advantages of this is also sharing experiences about the use of these licenses, because small and medium organizations can learn from the bigger one in order how to use and to apply, because sometimes it's not because small and medium organizations do not want, but they do not have the means in order to achieve that. So learning from the others, so learning by doing, but learning from the experience of the others could be a very good strategy. And I think it could be really centered around the philosophy of the commons, because it's a question, I mean, to share the investments in terms of time, in terms of resources of big organizations with small and medium organizations. I think that it could be, and probably we need also, I mean, I'm talking as part of this project, we need also to create, to develop some sensibility actions just to provide visibility first, as you did, that these specific licenses do exist, but also to create a kind of interorganizational collaborations to share these specific experiences. Because let's say UK's libraries or museums, it could be great, but their experience will be lost because it's not shared with other organizations. And I think it could be a good point to create even some kind of online networks, to share and also to connect people that are interested with bigger organizations in order to share their experiences, because probably even the big organizations, even if they have a lot of resources, personnel fully dedicated for that, they face different challenges, and probably small and medium organizations can learn from that, avoiding these failures that probably big organizations have, in order that their learning trajectory will be smoother.
Yeah, for sure. Exactly. And it's all about being in contact and discussing collaboratively in order to find solutions. Cultural organizations in Europe face more or less the same problems, depending on the amount of people that are working in the organization. So if we maintain a network of people and exchange knowledge and share solutions that we may have found, we can adapt in this challenging situation and this challenging climate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Perfect. So, are there any other questions, curiosity about the use of the licenses? Everything is fine? Julia?
Yes, just one question. What is the next step of the Open GLAM initiative?
Yeah, I mean, the people in Open GLAM, they do work on various things. They are now focused on developing, I think, a new declaration of good practice, but also they are providing these training courses, if I'm not mistaken. So they are actually quite active in the field. I would suggest, we visit their website and to look for further information, and of course, try to also, apart from these people, try to also look around in your area or country, that there might be more organizations or even small clubs, let's say, or hacker spaces, as we say, that they have actually stations, they have places that you can go and be informed, but also use the materials and the equipment available, and they also have, like, as these small training workshops for relevant people to kind of learn about the licenses, about other tools, relevant tools, and so on and so forth. So, look around, there might be colleagues, providing services or tools.
Perfect. For the sake of clarity and also access to resources, may I ask you to send it to Delphine the links of the references that you provided, because then it could be nice for the different organizations, because the idea is that this webinar will be, as we know, is recorded and then it will be put online in order that people that will watch it later, they can have full access, because I think it's part also of this disseminations activity that we are supposed to do to provide all the information. Of course, we will remain, all the participants have all our contacts, and we'll be delighted if we have later further questions to address these questions. Okay?
Yeah, we will, of course, the PowerPoint will be accessible to all, and there will be a final slide with all the sources used to develop this kind of presentation. But also, if you feel that you have a question that hasn't been answered, you can always forward it to me, and if I don't know the exact answer, I can ask around and come back with an answer.
Yes.
So yeah, but really happy to keep it going and promote more discussion and more challenging ideas around the concept, so we can build our own small community that can be integrated to the bigger community of people interested in cultural open data and the practice in the GLAMs.
Perfect. Still keeping going on, be creative and keeping this collaborative approach that characterizes actually our project. So I think that, we are at the end of this nice online event. So thank you again for your nice presentation, Stelios. It was really nice to moderate this discussion, and thank you also for the different participants. It was really nice. And hopefully there will be other events online or in presence, just to spread out all the knowledge that we accumulated within the project GLAMMONS. Thank you, and we wish you a nice afternoon.